Hello and welcome to Connecting Tucson with Jaime Overturf, broadcasting from the Tucson Business Channel, a division of Mark Bishop Media, situated in the Stewart Title corporate offices on Broadway in Tucson, Arizona. Connecting Tucson is all about connecting our community, local businesses, organizations, nonprofits to help our community grow and thrive. Today we're talking to Bryan, the CEO and founder of Wholistic Transformation, Changing Hearts and Community, as well as William Lake-Wright, who is one of our constables in Pima County. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you guys. William was raised as an Air Force brat, is his terms, not mine. Moving around the world, he came to Arizona in 1984, attended a Sal Point Catholic High School.
That's correct.
Excellent. He joined the Air Force in 1989, went to the University of Arizona, and was married for 30 years. He currently has 2 children, ages 23 and 16, and he was widowed in 2021. Bryan is a longtime resident of Tucson and a very passionate about his city. He's a proud graduate of Tucson High School and the University of Arizona. He serves on the board chair and interim pastor as the Bethel Community Baptist Church and is served on the board of directors for the Tucson Federal Credit Union and is an entrepreneur at heart and has been fortunate to have a varied career. And I've read your career. That is a varied career, and I'm interested in seeing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you to each tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and then we're going to go into some of the things that we're talking about today. So William, let's talk about you. Give me a little bit about your background, what your history is, what you do, and then we'll go to you. Is that okay, Bryan?
Sure. All right. So the term military brat is actually a respected term. It means that you grew up with your parents being in the military, so you moved all around.
Yes.
So it develops a certain type of personality, obviously, because every few years you're moving from different states, different countries, and you learn to adapt and talk. And obviously, I have the gift of gab, so that's why I put that in there. With that, I did get to see the world, and then of course my parents moved here for my high school, so I went to high school here in Tucson. I graduated, and of course I joined the Air Force and went off on my own. Came back to Arizona, went to the University of Arizona while I was still working in the Air Force, got my degree, and then I got my commission, became an officer instead of enlisted, and I won a pilot training slot. So I flew F-16s, did a tour over in the Middle East, and then came back from that. I went to the Pentagon for a little bit, and then came back, and I was working with Space Command here in Arizona, ironically with high-altitude balloon stuff.
Yes,
so
that's
we'll
already been all over the news. We're good with that.
So I did that, and then I was offered a job working for the Border Task Force with Task Force Raven for the aviation, running the border and the counter-drug mission. So that took me up to retirement. When I retired, I went to work for Home Depot. I ran all the sales for the stores and the 10 stores in this district. And then I left that, started my own construction company, built 11 houses, did a lot of remodels here in town, and then closed that down, sold it off, and I bought a limousine company. And that has been running now for going on 8 years. So
how did that get you to the constable position is what I'm trying to figure out.
So as being a small business owner, my wife was battling cancer. So that's very tough on home insurance and business insurance. And so I went back to work for the county. I worked in the assessor's office to try and get through that. Unfortunately, she succumbed to her battle with cancer. The chemotherapy actually caused her to pass away, and I'm still dealing with that. So in the midst of all my heartache, I decided I needed something different. I mean, I love the people in the assessor's office, but
Exactly.
I needed a change. And it just so happened that the time worked out that a constable had decided to retire, and her seat was vacant. So I went in to get appointed to fill her vacancy, and I won that appointment. So I've been a constable for a year and a half now, and of course I just won my election in November. So I got elected for another 2 years. It's usually a 4-year term, but it was a special election, so I only got 2 years on that, and I'll have to run again in 2 years. But it was just something, I needed something to focus my mind and get it off of my personal life and some way to give back to the community and help the community. And it filled that void absolutely beautifully. I love the job and I hate the job. Because, I'm sure one of the questions you're going to ask me is, what does a constable do? And we can get into that.
We'll get that, but my question is, how do you balance not only owning your own business, but being a constable as well? That's you have hats that...
Yeah, I thought about joining the circus because I've learned how to juggle. So when I became a constable, I hired somebody to essentially run the limousine company.
Okay.
So I can't do that and do this at the same time. So I hired a wonderful lady named Gina, who runs the daily maintenance of the limousine company. I still handle the finances and the taxes and everything else, but that allows me to focus on being a constable, because this is not only just a job, but it's it's a political career as well. So I have to do. I'm sorry, I keep hitting that. I have to do the job 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends. But then there's the added aspect of it of I'm now the presiding constable for Pima County, so I represent all the constables. So I'm doing all the politics, the budget, the administration, the staff, and everything else. So it's quite the workload, but it keeps me busy. It keeps my mind off other things.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, because I didn't know what a constable was until I actually researched it, because I obviously know you. And it was one of those where I was like, what the heck is a constable and what they do? So why don't you tell us what a constable does?
So I run into two types of people. Those that go, what is a constable? Which is the majority of people. And those that go, oh.
Because they've dealt with you at one point or another.
They have. We're not the most liked. And I was explaining this a little bit beforehand, but it goes back to the old territorial days. So you had a justice of the peace that ran the law in each one of the parts of the territories, and you had a sheriff. The sheriff was responsible for taxation and enforcing the rule of law, and then it would go to the justice of the peace, who would rule on that and make decisions, and then he had a constable who would enforce the rule of the court. So those are the 3 points on it, and we're all elected. So the justice of peace is elected, the sheriff's elected, and the constable's elected. As statehood came around and things grew, now you have superior court, you've got justice court, you've got municipal courts. So you've got judges. The sheriff now has a bunch of deputies enforcing traffic and everything else, because times have changed. But the constables haven't really changed. So we're still elected. We still enforce the ruling of the court. Instead of just the justice of the peace, we enforce justice court, but we can also enforce superior court and municipal courts if they so ask us to. But we are directly elected and responsible to our constituents, the people who vote us into office. We have the ability to get deputies or appoint deputies. Obviously, in today's society, we can't just appoint deputies, because now we have to go to the board and get funding for those deputies, and that's been kind of difficult, but I'm still trying to do that. And there's bills in front of the legislature right now to try and see if they can reorganize the way the constables. So right now we have 9 constables in Pima County, and you have 1 sheriff. There's people who want to have 1 constable and 1 sheriff, and then a bunch of deputies that run everything. As I said, I'm not opposed to that, but that's not the way the law currently states. So I'm running it right now the way the law wants us to, with the 9 constables. And if they change it, then we'll change with it. But that's kind of how it works right
So what do you exactly do?
Okay. So since we enforce the rule of the court, that is the one that everyone knows us about, that does know about it, is usually evictions. That's the majority of what we're doing, especially in society today. And I think that's going to tie into what we're going to talk about a little bit. We also do restraining orders, whether it be injunction against harassment or a restraining order for family or romantic relationship. We do what's called a writ of execution, which is seizures for the court. So if you have a judgment against you and you're not paying it, we go out and we seize assets, and we have them at a sheriff's sale or a constable's sale, and we sell those assets to satisfy your judgment. No one likes us for that either. And then we do civil summons and criminal summons and subpoenas, and in some cases we can actually do warrants.
Okay, so you're actually really trying to serve the community and what's going on from the court aspect, correct?
So yes, that's
trying to figure one more.
That is one aspect of it. We do serve the court.
Okay.
Now the statute or the law says the judge gives us the orders, we go serve those orders. How we serve those orders is really where it's going to play in there. So for evictions, by law, all we have to do is get the judge's order, go knock on a door, say you got 15 minutes to grab your cell phone, your charger, your medications, and a pair of clothes, and get out because you no longer reside here in this domicile. So we were returning it back to the landlord.
Okay.
That's kind of harsh, especially when you start taking away one of those key three elements, food, water, and shelter.
And I know you're trying to get people to have access to some, I guess, resources to help them with that. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. And Bryan, you actually have done a lot with not just helping our community, but mostly our community who are aging out of the foster system. So kind of maybe having some resources that can help with that. But why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today?
So I moved to Tucson when I was 6 months old. So a long time ago. Went all through public school.
Not that long.
Well, yeah, I wish. Went through public school, and as you mentioned, graduate of Tucson High. So when I hear that Bill graduated from South Point, there was a little bit of a problem because we're back in the day.
Forgot about
still.
that. I forgot about that.
But now that I found that he flew F-16s, he's back in the good.
Okay, that's good.
My good graces, and so yeah, growing up here, I graduated from U of A. Huge U of A basketball fan. Bear down. I have an accounting degree. Went into business. Worked for a major corporation coming out of college, and then came back in 1988. Opened my very first gas station at 22nd and Alvernon. It was an Exxon station, and just rock and rolled from there. At one point, I had 6 gas stations. Adopted a child, and when I decided to adopt a child, my time became the most important thing to me. Ended up getting rid of all the stations and just keeping one. So I had a gas station for about 25 years at 6th and Park. It was called Jets Wildcat, right on the U of A campus.
I know, right? Yep.
And so many students staying in the dorms came through. Ended up getting into real estate development. Had multiple houses in the U of A area, renting to U of A students. I've used the Constable services in the past as a landlord, so I didn't think they were all bad at that time.
The only people that like us.
Yeah, on the different side of things.
Okay.
And so then, I tell people I was in the gas station business for 25 years, and 22 of them were fantastic. I was blessed with a wonderful, made lots of money, and life was good. The last 3 years, this was like 28 to 2012. Everything went. I couldn't make any money. It was it was a very difficult time.
2008 was a bad year.
Yeah, and it ran all the way through. And then after you've done something for that long, it's hard to know when to get out. And as a small business owner, what I tell people is a good small business is the best thing in the world. A bad small business is the worst thing in the world because you're the last one to get paid. And so I had employees that had been with me for 19 years. It was difficult to make that decision to what to do.
And in 2012, something changed.
Yes.
And can you explain that?
Yeah, so in 2012, I decided I had to get out of the business because I was racking up debt and unbelievable. Had an opportunity, went to a training for an organization called the Global CHE Network. And CHE stands for Community Health Evangelism or Community Health Education. And it basically is a strategy to do holistic community development.
So can you explain what community health evangelism is specifically while you're doing that? Because I know 2012 really did change where you started to move forward. But can you also explain what that is as well?
Yes. So community health evangelism, one of the strategies, it's a strategy to do holistic development. So when we spell holistic with a W, meaning the whole person, because what most organizations and most people who are wanting to help and do good, they specialize. They separate the person's spiritual needs from their physical needs, from their emotional, social, environmental. And we as individuals, when we're hurting, we don't separate our needs. And so there's a specialization, and it's our belief basically is that if we're going to help someone, we need to develop a relationship, and we need to start with where their felt need is at that time. And it may be food, it may be shelter, and it may be the spiritual side, it may be environmental. But we have to start where the person is. And so I traveled basically all over the world. The network was made up of about 650 different organizations, churches using this strategy in about 135 countries. And so I spent a lot of time in Africa, continued to live in Tucson, but just traveled multiple countries in Africa, Haiti, Guatemala, Philippines, working, training those to go into the rural village. My elevator speech was just training locals to use local resources to solve local problems.
So CHE is something that's actually a global.
Yes.
Okay. So what is holistic transformation and what is their mission then?
So holistic transformation is the key in trying to help is transformation. And so the name of my organization now is Holistic Transformation, Changing Hearts, Minds, and Communities. And what most are doing is we're doing relief work.
Okay.
As opposed to, and transformation takes place inside. And so it's changing the heart and changing the mind, the way people think. And it is difficult, it's hard, it's dirty. It's a process. Maybe a quick story is, I call it the fish parable. Most of us probably know we give a man a fish today, he'll be hungry tomorrow, we teach him to fish. But what many people don't ask is, does he have access to the lake? Does he have a fishing pole? So those are justice issues where we fail in many ways, in my opinion. And then the other question is, does he know how to manage the lake? And so that's another issue. But think about the process of, Jaime, you decide you want to help me. Say, Bryan, let's go fishing this afternoon. You and I can go fishing. We might not catch any fish. We could go fishing tomorrow and not catch any fish. We could go and the line breaks. One of us fall in the lake. And so you can understand the difficulty. I could learn how to fish and still not catch any fish. You could say, okay, Bryan, I'm going to pick you up on a Friday at 10 o'clock, and I don't show up. So it's very, very frustrating to be part of the transformation to teach someone to fish. It's easier, and what we fall back on especially is I'm just going to buy a fish. It's easier for me to spend my money. And these are good people, so I'm not being critical. And that's what I call relief, is giving someone a fish. But if we're not willing to be involved in their lives and teach them to fish, it's never going to change.
So what you're specifically for holistic transformation, you're looking at the children that are aging out of fostering, correct?
Yes. So
can you explain a little bit more about how that process works and how you are trying to help?
Yeah. So what typically in the foster care, what happens is their children are taken out of their home. Because the mother and father, and in many cases, it's drug issues, and so they become a ward of the state. The state is, in fact, in control of them. And in many cases, they'll go into a group home. They're trying to find individual homes, they're trying to find kinship placement, but there are many that fall through and end up in a group home.
It's hard to find kinship.
Right.
Yes.
And so then at 18, they're emancipated, is the term the state uses, and so they are in effect cut loose. Now, it's not entirely fair because there's tremendous resources available to them, but there's so much angst between them and the state. They want to get as far away as they can. And so, and starting to learn about the foster care, I can throw, 40% of kids coming out of the foster care between 18 and 22 or 23 will be homeless. 40% will be unemployed. Many of them don't have a high school education. The one statistic that is heart-wrenching to me is young women between the age of 18 and 21, over 70% of them will end up pregnant. And so we're just perpetuating what's happening. And so again, people are trying, many good people are trying to be into that realm, but we're not seeing the transformation. And again, it's my feeling that we need to focus on changing the hearts and minds. And so, our idea is we're going to take shipping containers, build one-bedroom houses, put 4 of them on a lot with a navigator. And so it's not about the house. That helps the shelter, which they need. Everybody needs shelter. But the point is, how does that change the way they think?
Right.
So you're taking many who have never had their own bedroom, never had anything, and you're giving them that their bedroom, they're having a kitchen, they're having their whole thing, and we actually want them to be involved in developing and building the units, where we want them to pick out colors. So the idea is that sense of ownership and their importance, that we care what they think and what they're feeling. And so, I mean, that's the basic principle is how do we be part of changing how someone feels and how someone thinks.
And that's actually big importance even with people who are getting evicted, because they honestly, they're probably at their last end and not having the resources that they need to do that with. So maybe it's not the constable's office, but maybe it's a state program. What do the people that are being evicted have access to? Or, because I know that they don't really deal with the people that are coming out of, foster care and aging out, but you have access to, I just made that noise. But you are dealing with other people that are getting evicted and getting basically, I guess, homeless. What can they do?
There's actually a lot of parallels between what
and that's what I was just saying, that there should be some parallels.
So as I talked about a statute eviction of just knocking and get out. And I personally couldn't do that. So I go out ahead of time. I knock on the door. I give them a brochure explaining the process. They've already been through 45 days plus. You've done this as a landlord. 45 days plus of courts and hearings and everything else like that. They know they're getting evicted, but it's a scary moment when the constable shows up to take away their house.
Yeah.
So I explain the process to them. I say, okay, when I come back in 2 days, you're going to have to leave the property. We're going to change the locks. So get as much of your stuff out then as you can, or before that point. And then you'll have 14 days to come back and schedule 1 day with your landlord to get the rest of your stuff out. So that softens the blow a little bit, because now it's not panic mode of, oh my God, I'm out on the street. What am I going to do? Also in that brochure that we're giving them or talking to them about, it has the social services. So it's got shelters. It's got the constable's office created an office called EELS, which is Emergency Eviction Legal Services. During COVID, that was great because it offered rental assistance. Rental assistance was good for the landlord and the tenant because it helped the tenant stay in the apartment, helped the landlord get paid, because people don't realize that the landlord needs to get paid too, because he's got to pay all the bills.
That's not happening anymore, but still.
So it is not happening anymore, but we built the program and then it kind of bloomed from there. So EELS not only offers, rental assistance through private donors and everything else, but they offer work assistance, getting people jobs. They offer rapid relocation. So if they don't have a place to go, if they can find an apartment, they'll help them find an apartment or place to stay that is affordable to them. So they have a lot of services in there. They have drug services, through the Community Bridges program and everything else. So I call it circling the wagon. It's a term that I borrowed from another constable who's no longer a constable, but it is really circling the wagon around them with all those social services so that it's not such a shock when they're getting kicked out, because a lot of times it's not entirely their fault. Now, sometimes people just don't pay. That's to be said. But, you look at Tucson, the housing market boomed through the ceiling.
Just about to talk about that, but still, yes.
So I'll lead you to it. So
no, that's fine.
Housing market boomed through the ceiling. Cost of housing went up. The economy right now. So it's expensive. Eggs I saw for $7.99 for a dozen.
At Costco, it's $5.99 for 24.
But let me interrupt for a minute.
No, go right
because
ahead.
There's not a lack of resources. Okay,
It's-
the problem is navigating the resources.
Correct.
And the people that are struggling, the difficulty of navigating through what's available is what is so difficult. And so part of what we're doing is we're going to have a navigator live on site to help navigate what's there. There's plenty of opportunities there. And so, and the same thing there, Pima County is offering, they have workforce development. Pima County still is offering rental assistance. There's multiple nonprofit organizations that are helping.
They
with
just
that.
don't know how to get there.
They just don't know how to get there. And so it's getting the resources to the people when they need them and how they need them.
And
Right.
we call them navigators as
Right. So you were talking about the rapid relocation, and sometimes people might not know what that is, and maybe they can't do that. So what are the other options if they can't do the rapid relocation, or maybe they just can't afford it? So
So the rapid relocation is not necessarily them affording, essentially, and normally our navigators deal with this. I just kind of enforce the statutes.
Right.
But what happens is they have to pay the application fees and everything else, but private donors and, funds
Help
available
do that?
are there will pay for, I think, 4 months. So it's their deposit, their first month's last month, to get them into that apartment. So it's not hurting them. They don't have to come up with all this money. So as you said, the resources are there. It's just a matter of utilizing those resources. And most of the people we deal with don't know what resources are available to be able to take advantage of them. Now, there are people that take advantage of resources, but majority don't know about it. So if you give them that opportunity and help them and get a navigator that helps guide them, then not only can we get them into a place that they can afford, but we can get them job placement services, we can get them back on their feet. And the entire point of it is to get them back on the feet. We don't want homeless camps. We don't want them living in cars. We want them back to being productive members of society. That's what makes us all feel good.
Exactly. And it helps make Tucson a better place because there's people that are there that are working. But do you offer those to 18 to 21-year-olds, or how often is that utilized?
I offer it to every single person that
Okay.
I evict. Well, I can't say that because not everyone. If it's a immediate eviction because of crime or something like that,
Right.
that's
Different.
They don't get that.
100% different.
But when you file for eviction for non-payment, then that's where we really focus this on. So, and it's up to the constable. If I go out there and I see a 72-year-old man who's on oxygen, nasal cannula, who's going through chemotherapy, I don't want to kick him out on the road that day. So I'm going to get adult protective services, veteran services, everybody I can to see what we can do to take care of him. And I will work with the landlord saying, you've been doing this for 45 days. Can you wait 3 more while we can get all these services wrapped around him to see if we can get this taken care of? So that's my role as a constable, and that's what I'm trying to do to help the community.
And completely am appreciative of both of what you guys are trying to do. So we're about halfway through, and I can honestly say that this is the most interesting conversation that I've had, and most one that I'm invested in, because if you don't know, my father was adopted, and there are things that we are doing to try to help the community, not just from people that are aging out, but for people that are being evicted that we can assist. So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Connecting Tucson with Jaime, where we focus on connecting our community, local businesses, and nonprofits and organizations to help our community grow and thrive. As a local insurance professional for all of your insurance needs, I know how important it is to make a lasting connection in our own community. If you never knew how a connection could create a spark or pull you in a new direction, you should listen to my podcast, because I have different varying opinions that are going on. Right now, we're talking with William Lake-Wright and Bryan Benz about some of our most important topics, and I'd like to continue with that. I never knew how many people were getting evicted in the state of Pima County. Can you tell me why that's happening right now? And give us an example of what's going on in the community because of it.
Okay, so we are coming back to pre-COVID levels as far as papers being served. COVID changed everything.
Yes.
So when COVID hit, people were unemployed. The government stepped in and said, okay, you're not doing evictions for this period of time. And then we had rental assistance. So we were keeping people in their houses. COVID's drawing to an end. All those resources have dried up. The laws have changed back to the way they were. So now evictions are going back up. So we're back to where we were before COVID hit. So we're doing probably about 600 evictions a month. Now, Pima County is a large county. It's not a state, like you said. But
I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes, you're correct. I did say state. Pima County.
But-
Pima County, not Arizona.
Pima County is a large county. And so obviously those numbers reflect. If we were in one of the smaller counties, you're not going to have nearly those numbers. But Maricopa County and Pima County,
Different.
are large in the state. So we have those numbers. But 600 evictions, if you do the simple math, that's just evictions. We do writs of execution, which are seizures. We do restraining orders, all the other papers on there. And that's divided amongst 9 constables. So, for instance, Tuesday of last week, I walked into the office and I had 59 evictions in my box. So I had to do 59 evictions in that week. So that's a little bit of
How
work.
do you handle that with only 9? Sorry.
So those-
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Those were just mine. So those are the ones that I had to do. So if you do the
You had
simple math,
59 by yourself.
yes, those were mine. So that
And
means
the other 8 had others?
just as many.
Okay.
So I can probably do 14 evictions a day, just physically getting from one place to the other, because believe me, it takes time when you sit there and knock on a door. Now, if they've moved out because they got my brochure and they took off, then it's 15 minutes. Just clear the house, give it back to the landlord. We can call it good, but they don't always go that way. So I usually get 14 evictions done a day, and then I work on my other papers, my civil papers. In my best day, if you want to call it that, I did 22 evictions, but there were 5 evictions in one apartment complex. So
Why do you think there's so many evictions going on right now?
Well, let me interrupt and let me tell a quick story to make eviction real.
That's fine.
So, elderly woman, living on Social Security, $849 a month Social Security. That's over the income. Her rent was $750 a month for the last number of years. And so as you can see, she's got like $60, $70 a month over and above her rent. She was making it work. The landlord came to her and said, your rent's going to be $950. So that's a real, and this is a 70-year-old plus, and the numbers could be off a little bit.
They're raising the
right.
rents.
And so that's not, what is that woman supposed to do? What is that elderly woman supposed to do? And so oftentimes we hear evictions and people get negative that they're just deadbeats. And the point of what's happening in our world here, in our city in particular, bad things are happening to good people. It's not just bad people that are being evicted.
So I'm going to, as an insurance professional, I hear a lot of this because I do insure a lot of renters. Let's just put it that way. It seems that renters are having, like homeowners have their own mortgage set that they're not going to change, but renters seem to have a higher limit that's going above and beyond what we're seeing in the past 2 years. And it's just increasing. Is that just me, or
No,
go ahead?
it's supply and demand.
it is supply and demand, and that based on the housing market. So, I bought my first duplex back in 1994. And when I bought the duplex, the people who were living in it were paying $350 a month for each side of the duplex.
Right.
Well, obviously I bought it. I wanted to live in one side of it and rent the other out. So I kicked everybody out, renovated the whole thing, put nice wood floors in, all new fixtures, cabinets. I lived in my side, rented out the front. I wasn't going to do that from $350 a month, So, I turned around and I rented it for $800 a month, and everyone thought, oh, that's ridiculous. Well, people snatched it up. That same unit today would be going, because it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, kitchen, living room, 1,300 square feet with a yard and a fence, and that's going to go for about $2,000 a month right now. And it was only $800. So I still have property and I still rent it out, and I could double the amount of rent that I'm making right now because of the property values. But I have tenants in there that I don't want to raise their rent. And I'm getting what I need out of it. As long as I have a tenant in there, they're paying the mortgage, they're paying for my maintenance fees. So I'm happy to keep them in there. But if they leave and I have to re-rent it, I'm going to readjust that because it's the market value. And looking at it going, I can make more. Is it me trying to get richer? No, it's still an investment. I'm going to have the problems with the houses. I'm going to have to change the air conditioner at, $20,000. I'm going to have to, fix plumbing and do all this other stuff. And I invest all that back into the houses, but that's really where it's coming from. So rents are going up. You have people who just can't afford it anymore. If I raised my rent, I know right now that I would not be able to keep the people that are, in the complexes. They couldn't afford it.
So do we see that as a problem that people are getting evicted because they can't pay that, or even people that are aging out of the system, they can afford $2,000 a month for rent. So what are some of the resources that we are doing for these I'm going to call them children. They're 18 years old. They have no idea specifically, like, if they have to get a job, they have to have a place to live. And if they don't have a place to live, they can't do the paychecks. And it's like this roundabout scenario. Like, if they want to get a job, they have to say, oh, I'm living here. This is where you're sending everything. Like, what are some resources that can help them specifically? And I'm going to leave that open to either of you who want to answer it.
Well, I think the development of affordable housing, smaller, and again, I think part of there's multiple solutions. It's a broad problem. We need as many different players. So one of the ideas is shipping containers as one-bedroom houses. Now, the issue the Pima County looks at it, planning and development looks at shipping containers different than the city of Tucson. And there's still, in my opinion, we're not changing the bureaucracy of being able to create enough affordable housing for the need. And so there's, Pima County and the city of Tucson passed what they call ADU, accessory dwelling unit. And so on theory, they've made it easier, but it's not taking place. They're not receiving the applications because there's other bureaucracy in trying to do it. So one example is I want to buy a shipping container. I live in Pima County. I want to build it out, and I want to be able to sell it as an ADU in the city of Tucson. I can't do that. I can't get it permitted in order to do that across, so there's a bureaucracy there.
So how can as a community help those individuals that absolutely need them? Like, how can we assist you?
I think we need to get our politicians, if you will, we need some test cases. We need some projects to be able to move forward and let's try this and see what do we have to do. So like the shipping container in particular, it's not even necessarily that the city's against, but the city has a manufactured housing deal with, and that's something that has axles and wheels, and you pull it onto the lot and you take the axles and wheels off, or they have an RV requirement. So they don't have the shipping containers not fit in either one of those categories. And so now I can do, in the city of Tucson, I can do a site build. You know, I could come out to your house, you could hire and have it built, but I can't build it at my house and transfer it without having a manufacturer's license. There's only one inspector in the whole entire state for manufacturing, and they're really inspecting the factory. So there's another organization here called Ideal Institute, which is a construction training school. They actually have 70 modular units that they haven't been able to sell because they can't get them inspected. And so now one of the city council members is trying to approach to be able to get the city to handle the inspection part.
So you can be able to make that into an individual.
Yes. So their models, they take two of them and put them together.
So each individual. Okay, so I'm thinking a shipping container in my mind, and I'm sorry, it's like the rectangle, and I'm looking at it right now in my mind. But that one rectangle would be a 1-bedroom unit for a specific person.
Right, 320 square feet.
Okay. And you have space for that, but we need to figure out how to get the program started, I guess, is what we're talking about.
And so again, what I'm pursuing is to try to connect with the political side of things to run interference for me as a test case.
Got it. And I know you're political, but you don't deal with that. You deal with something else. But my question is, real quick, with the evictions, because it's going through my head right now, that can be a dangerous job.
It can. As a matter of fact, we lost.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I'm just thinking about this at the second, because that can be when you're trying to evict someone who's in a home and they've their livelihood's there, even if it's a 70-year-old, that's their home.
Even if they're renting, it's their home. So home is where you lay your hat. Is where your family is. It's the kitchen. It's what it is. And so whether it's theirs by ownership or rent or whatever, it's still their home. And so when you're taking that away from somebody, that's when you're going to get pushback. Unfortunately, back in August, we lost a constable in the line of duty because exactly that person was fearful of losing their home, and then had a mental health issue and wound up killing the constable, the property manager, and a neighbor, and then himself. That drastically changed the way I do business and the way the constables do business. Before that incident, I used to wear a polo shirt and 511s and walk up to people trying to act more like a social worker so that they weren't intimidated by the police uniform and the gun and the badge and everything else. Because I was trying to disarm them and, as I said, be more of a friend and a social advocate. After that happened, it changed the way we do things. So we wear the body armor now. We got body cams, tasers, guns. But it doesn't change the way I do business and how I relate with people. So even though I'm going in there looking menacing, I still relate to them as people. And you were talking about setting up the infrastructure for getting the housing and everything else like that. I was also, and navigators, we use navigators because a lot of the biggest problem is people don't know what resources are available or how to access those resources. So if I do an eviction and they don't know where to go, then they're going to go out on the street. So we try and get that to them. We also try and navigate them through the court system. Anybody who's ever dealt with the court system, you filed for evictions. Was it fun? No, it's not. So we have navigators that help walk through that. So if we can educate people and help them through that process, this is a very specialized process.
It is.
So same thing when you have 18 to 20-year-olds who are, getting out of the foster care system. What do they know?
Nothing.
I have a
I'll
16-year-old,
be honest, I knew
23-year-old.
nothing at 18. I don't know if you knew anything at 18 or you knew anything at 18, but I thought I knew it all, but I knew
They don't.
nothing.
So, and granted, I was in the Air Force, so I had meals and everything
Right.
provided for me, but it gave me the opportunity to learn how to budget and do all the other stuff. Otherwise, if I went straight into society, I don't know how I would have done. So, looking at that, you're giving an opportunity to help them find their footing, without having to worry about getting evicted, having that on their record for the rest of their lives, or having to worry about, where's my next meal going to come from, because they can get that footing and then work into society and be better members of society.
And I'll be honest, I've run into a lot of people that just don't want to ask for help because they think the stigma for asking for help is that they're weak.
Oh, there's a pride issue, I can tell you that.
And I don't believe in that. But what would you tell our listeners that if they are going through this situation, either it being going through, aging out of the foster care system or being evicted, what would you tell those people? And I'm going to go with you first, Bryan.
Well, I think it's in all of our issues in all of our life is to be proactive, to try to get ahead and to try to see. You mentioned you get a 45-day notice.
Yeah.
And then, what plans are you making now? But again, all of us have a tendency, if we have bad news at times, to try to put it behind and ignore it and not
Yes.
bury our hand. Or the same thing with you talking about someone, they know when their 18th birthday is coming up.
Yeah.
And so what type of plans do they have? And part of it is creating relationship. The key, and if we go back to the 18 to 21 years old, so the people that are supposed to love them have not been able to love them.
Yeah.
And again, and I will bet that each of us have had people in our lives that help us through those bad decisions and through the things that we do to come alongside us. I mean, I know I did, and I wouldn't be here because I know I made bad decisions, but yet I had, in my case, it was grandparents. I had loving grandparents, and I had friends, and I had church family that came alongside to be able to help. And so that's part of the fact is trying to build relationships with those that are struggling. So, you go out and give a 3-day notice, which is fantastic. I mean, that's over and above what's necessary. But, how do we create a system that we have a 45, that we have people that come around them at the 45 when they first receive the eviction notice and help them through? How do we get the navigator in touch with that at that time? So to prevent it, and then you have underlying issues. The other part of all of this, of course, is asking the question, why are you being evicted?
But here's the question. A lot of times they don't understand what questions to ask. And I think that could be an issue, especially
Right.
with the younger kids. Like I might know the questions to ask because I've been in the industry for a while, but how do we know to train them who are getting evicted or somebody that needs help, the questions to ask and where to go? And I'm going to
step back to your original question.
Okay,
what
go
do you
ahead.
tell someone?
Yeah.
As Bryan said, the resources are out there. It's just a matter of finding them. So if
That's
we can
key.
get them to those resources, then it's up to me to identify a need. Are they a vulnerable adult, child? What's the scenario?
Yeah, do they have a mental
So I
illness or
have to
something?
identify that. Maybe the property manager identifies that. We have navigators that are embedded in the court system. So when they first go into court, the navigator's reaching out to them and trying to precede all this before it gets to the eviction to try and help them. So there's change in there, but it's got to be a societal change. If you see someone in need, how many times do we just, look at the other direction?
Push it away, yeah.
So I don't want to deal with that. Or do you actually turn around and ask somebody, hey, do you need help? Now, a lot of people don't want to ask for help, but how many times do you ask them, do you need help? So, and really what I would say is you do have to ask. So, and it's just asking the right people. And a lot of times it's sucking up the pride of saying, where can I go for help? So I'm not having them ask me. I'm going out and saying, here's a list. Here's a way to do it.
Because if someone says, hey, do you need help? The first thing that someone's going to say is, no, I'm good.
Or they might turn around and go, yes, I do.
That's true. I think I found it in 90% of my cases say, like, hey, can I help you? It's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
But
if they
see,
actually need help.
But develop a relationship so you know.
Yes.
How many times
Yes.
in a death situation, a loved one dies and you say, well, let me know if I can help. And 99% of the time does the person ever come back and say, could you do this for me? But being aware of what they might need, whether it be food, whether it be, landscaping, whether it be, we need to be proactive in having a relationship and having an understanding of what, and then just do it. Just show up on the house.
Versus asking and
Yeah.
just doing it.
I will personally vouch for that. When my wife passed away, I can't tell you how many people said, if you need anything, call me. Do you need anything? No, I wanted to curl up in a shell and just ignore the world. But then there were the people who just kept hounding me. There were people who dropped off dinner. There were people who just came by to see how I was doing. Or people who would take my kids and go do something with them, just give me a moment to just, I didn't have to cry in the shower anymore. I could just, openly let it out. But those were the things. It was taking that step and not asking
The extra
anymore.
step
It was
and just doing it.
Just doing it. And that really made a mark on me because, in my time, I just wanted to shut everybody away. They could ask all day long, and I didn't want anything. So I'm strong. I'm a big, tough man. I can do this by myself. That's not true. So, and those people did come in, and they did help out, and they offered it, and then they didn't take no for an answer, and they just did something. And it was, as I said, it was something so simple as just making me a meal and dropping it off at the house so I didn't have to do it.
And I know both of you are really, I guess, involved in like the nonprofits and helping people. And I'm just going to ask this question. What got you involved in doing that specifically? You first.
Well, I'm a person of faith, and so when I see what Jesus did, I want to be like Jesus. And so, it starts from there.
Yep, Brian.
And so it's wanting to help. Now, what I don't want to help forever. I want to help you get up on your feet so you can help other people. So
pass it on.
I want to pass it on. So I want transformation.
Got it.
I want to change. I don't want to support you. I don't want to hold you up. I want to hold you up till you're ready to stand, but I want you to stand yourself. And then I want you to pass it on. And so that's where my heart and my passion came for, and I'll use the word transformation, is I don't want relief, I want development. I want you to move. And in the gas station business, just real quick, I had what I'd call a homeless ministry. Homeless people love to hang out at the gas station and panhandle. Mm-hmm. I would never let them panhandle, but I always found work for them. And so no matter what, one of my favorite stories that I love to tell is a homeless person hanging out at my station. The person ended up, I developed a relationship with him, found his story. He ended up becoming a manager for one of my stations. And that's a positive story. I can tell you a lot more where... That's good. Where bad things happen because there's, drug abuse and addiction and all those things. But the relationship is what led to me knowing that he needed a hand up. He wasn't looking for a handout.
Yeah.
He needed an opportunity, but that takes the time to develop a relationship to know, do they want a hand out or do they want a hand up? Do they just want assistance to get started?
I think that might be the key, is the relationship aspect.
Yeah, that's my...
I'm going to say no to that because I don't have the time to form relationships.
Right.
In 3 days, from the time I get the paperwork from the court.
You have a different aspect,
I am
but
ordered from the court
why.
to enforce that paperwork. Now, in 3 days, I can point them in the right direction to develop those relationships, but I don't personally get to have that relationship.
Right.
So I have to do my job one way or the other. So I've got just a limited amount of time to find you resources and do that. But I agree with what you're saying, but it doesn't affect me.
So what got you involved in some of the nonprofits and other things that are going on?
So in my life, I moved around a lot as a kid. One of the things that was always a constant was I was a Cub Scout, I was a Boy Scout, I was an Eagle Scout. So everywhere I moved, I would join a local troop and I would do, Boy Scout stuff. We'd go on hikes, we'd do community service, we'd do all that. And then, of course, I joined the Air Force, which is another form of service. Served my country for 20 years. Got out of that. I got back into scouting as a leader this time instead of just as a scout. Mm-hmm. I ran the camp up on Mount Lemmon for 4 years for the Boy Scout camp. Sure. I was a scoutmaster, a venturing advisor. I took kids to National Jamboree. I took them to Venture Fest. We'd do indoor skydiving, quad riding, go-kart racing, all kinds of horseback riding, all this. But it was developing those relationships and that sense of community service. Along with that is the same stuff that Boy Scouts always do is, you serve the community. They have their Scout oath and their Scout law. So that was always one of those places. There you go. My daughter was a Girl Scout. My son's a Boy Scout.
I can still do it. I can see.
So, but that's really what formed the basis of community service. And the other part of it is family. You know, my family conditioned me and trained me of, you have to give back to the community. You have to help out. It doesn't matter if you're rich, if you're poor, you know, everyone has the same problems in life. And, you know, I've had my highs, I've had my lows. So, and even with most people that know me know that I can be on the very bottom and I will still give you everything I possibly can.
Yes.
Within my limits, because I can't give you everything, but I will definitely try. And when I have the ability, I'll do that. But when I don't have the ability, I will still try everything I can to get you that.
So let's talk about that community aspect, because I think that there are things that we can do in the community to help both of the aspects that are going on and what we might be able to make some changes or maybe help change some laws. So I'm going to go with you. How can the community help with the eviction process that's going on? Or is there something that we can do as a community to help, like let people know that there's different revenues that they can go to, or there are different aspects that we can go? And then I'm going to go to you, Bryan.
I'm going to start off by saying I don't know the full answer to that.
That's okay.
There are a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of foundations as far as like shelters that provide food, that provide shelter, that provide resources, drug rehab. I see a lot of drugs. It's booming right now. And sometimes those are the people that you can't help. And it breaks your heart, because I've had a kid who knew that he had a drug problem, knew that he needed help. I offered to actually physically drive him to a clinic, and he's like, I'm not ready yet. I can't force him. I can take him to the water. I can't make him drink.
Yeah.
You know, and I walk away from it going, he's either going to hit bottom and decide he needs help, or, you know, he's going to die. That's really the
I could
the
not
two
do
parts of
your
it.
job. I'm about to cry, even though I'm seeing this right now. You've got a tough job.
So if you want to help, sometimes you can't.
Right.
No, now, I could go and get an involuntary and have him committed, but if he doesn't want the help, it's
He's
never
not
going
gonna-
to sit.
yeah, it's not gonna stick.
But those organizations that try and give that assistance when they do need it, you know, I'm not going to name any of them in
Do
particular.
they have links on your website where they can go to, or
So-
let's just say someone's getting evicted and they're like, okay, you've given me this pamphlet, but are there links or websites that they can go to?
No, because I'm nonpartisan.
Okay.
So, as I said, I give them a brochure that has them all listed. in
Right.
it. I can't make a
You
preference.
can't list it on yours. Okay.
I
got
can't
it.
give them advice, you know, or anything else, but I can give them the information that's there for them to utilize. I can get them in touch with the people that can direct them where to go. Me as a constable, I have to enforce the rule of law and the rule of the court.
Okay.
That's about it. Now, as a human being, as a person, I can offer to drive them there. There's nothing wrong with that. I can offer to take them there because I'm trying to help out a person, and that's within my abilities as an elected official. So whether it falls under constable, I'm still elected. I still represent these people, and I'm willing to do that. But there are other people out there that are much better suited to take care of them than I am. So that's where I kind of draw that distinction of I can't build that relationship.
Got it.
You know, just I don't have the time, and my position doesn't exactly allow me to do it. Now I build relationships with landlords because I see them every day, but that's a different story in and of it. So, so it's finding that balance, and so a lot of it's just getting them to the people that can help convince them that they need help, or they need job placement service, or they just need direction. They have financial classes that they give to people who've been evicted. We have resources
like
with
the
the
United
hotel.
Way does that. They
Yep.
do the financial planning.
So I give them over. It's a one-stop shop. EELS,
Got
Emergency Eviction Legal Services. One stop. They can set them up with all of that, and it's just a matter of the people saying, "Okay, I'm going to use this."
Okay. Bryan, how about you? What are some services that either the community can help with, or that you're looking for assistance with to help?
Well,
or
I think
specifically with the teenagers that are aging out of the system, what can we do?
Yeah, so we're a brand new nonprofit, and
Right.
so it's like starting a brand new business. And we're, you know, I'm the only person that is paid. Everyone else is volunteer. So we're trying to build volunteer teams in a multitude of different areas, whether it be with bookkeeping, whether it be social media, whether it be contact with the political people in power to be able to help, you know, get this process, to be able to get a test case going. So that's specifically for, you know, for holistic transformation. And, you know, on our website, my contact information is on there, and I would love to be able to talk to anyone who has a heart and an interest, and, you know, it'd be plugging them in where their heart is, where their interest is. And I think just overall in the community, though, is the idea are what we're doing, is it relief or is it development? Is it going to be for transformation, or is it going to be deeper, or just on the surface? So one other quick story, back to school backpacks. Many churches, many nonprofits do it.
Yes.
So what I say, and it's a great thing, they need a backpack, but I've yet to hear an organization that asks the question, why is the family not able to buy a backpack?
Yep.
And so then that's a deeper question. What are the roots? Are we looking at the roots of the problem, or are we looking at the consequences? And of course, the other part of that question is what happens next year when the backpack wears out? So part of it is a willingness to come together and ask those questions. And again, it's hard.
Yes.
So
Those are hard questions. You had something you wanted to input?
So, going back to the Boy Scouts, or anything, there's time for, if you ask for donations, what can the community do? There's two types of donations. This goes back to politics as well when I was running for office. There's two types of donations. If you don't have the money, you can donate your time. If you don't have the time, you can donate your money. Both of them help. They're both equally as valuable. So for me, if you don't have money to donate to the cause, then if you can donate your time and help,
Yes.
that's amazing, especially for you, Bryan. But then again, if you don't have the time, but you have the resources, those dollars actually really, really help, because it helps buy the materials that you need, pay for the staffing that you need to run these things, for signs, for shovels, whatever you're doing, that needs to come from somewhere. And time is
Right.
great if you're willing to help out, but if I don't have the tools to be able to do it, so it kind of requires both, but it fills both niches. So, because there are people out there that have time but don't have money. There are people out there that have money that don't have time. And of course, there's other people that don't have either.
Right.
Or some people that have lots of both. So,
Right.
but figure out what your poison's going to be and give that way.
Time or money, both are very valuable
Amen.
to nonprofits and people that are trying to help the community, and 100% agree with that. And I know we're coming close to our time, so I want to make sure that I am putting forward everything that we want to talk about. Is there something that I haven't talked about with either of you that you'd like to place forward? Bryan, I'll go with you.
no, I just want to continue to emphasize the importance of development and transformation. And I guess the other,
It's not just giving them
it's
something.
not just giving. And so there's 4 pillars of health. That's foundationally that I would say. And so we're looking at harmony with God, harmony with self, harmony with others, and harmony with environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our goal, and that should be the goal of every nonprofit, in my opinion, and so we're not truly healthy unless there's harmony. So any disharmony is sickness. And we can't make one area more important than the other.
They all have to be.
They all have to be there for us to be healthy. And so I think keeping, if you will, the big picture and being surrounded by people, and people may specialize, but someone needs to be overall aware of the whole person's picture.
Okay. Phil?
I love what you're doing. I love the idea of that you're creating a transition, training people to be able to be successful, and how important that is. As I said, I did that with Boy Scouts, trying to teach them skills that will last them in life. This is another very important one, getting people so they can get started on their feet instead of having their ankles cut out from under them. So that's huge, and I really, really appreciate that. In any way I can support that, I'd be more than willing to. So
Me
thank you
as
very
well
much.
as my listeners, and I'm excited about that. So I just want to thank you both for coming on the show. I learned a lot today. I didn't know what a constable did. I'm not going to lie. I had no idea. Had zero until I started looking into it and you started telling me about it.
That's good.
That's good for me. I don't own any properties where I would need you, but still. I just want to say thank you for coming on Connecting Tucson with Jaime here at the Stewart Title Studios. If you liked the show, listeners, just let us know. If you connect with us or Bill and Bryan on the Tucson Business Channel, a division of Mark Bishop Media, you can get to their links. I'll have those listed. As always, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Make a connection you never knew you were going to make. It could be something different and unique, and that's what we're here for. So if you like the show, let me know. And keep on making unique connections, Tucson, and you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie.